Hello there! Did you know that society in Chile was very different than now? Well, let's take a look.
19th century, the exploitation of saltpeter and mini in Chile generated a significant environmental impact. Mining companies used it to prioritize resource extraction over environmental protection. Deforestation was common, as they used it to cut down extensive forests to obtain fuel for steam engines. Mining tailings could contaminate rivers and soils, affecting the local flora and fauna. The nearby communities could suffer from drinking water contamination, and experts say this can have long-term effects on health. The lack of environmental regulations and the prioritization of production over environmental protection led to a series of environmental problems. Mining companies were not allowed to implement mitigation measures, and there were no laws requiring them to do so. The exploitation of natural resources without control could have devastating consequences for the environment and people's health. The Norte Grande region of Chile was especially affected by the exploitation of saltpeter mines, which used to be one of the main economic activities in the area, and this can affect local biodiversity. It is clear that mining companies should be allowed to operate only if they comply with certain environmental standards, but at the time such regulations did not exist. The lack of environmental awareness and the prioritization of production over environmental protection led to a series of environmental problems that affect the region.
In the 19th century in Chile, children's rights were very limited and defined by paternal and social control. Children could be considered primarily as part of the family under the father's authority, who was allowed to make decisions about their education and work, without the children being able to make their own decisions. Parental authority granted the father broad powers over his legitimate children. Children used to subject to strict norms, and both education institutions and the family were permitted to correct and punish their children as they deemed appropriate. During this period, formal education began to expand, but only some children could access it, as sending them to school was not mandatory and was not accessible to everyone. Children used to work from a very young age to help support their families, and there were no specific laws protecting their rights or prohibiting child labor. Childhood was viewed more as preparatory stage for adulthood than as a period with his own rights. Also, towards the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, some ideas about child protection began to emerge. Children could not decide on their education or religion, as these decisions were allowed to by their parents. However, there were already voices arguing that children could and should have certain rights such as the right to education and freedom from cruel punishment, although these ideas were rarely guided.
With the passing of the 19th century, Chile went from being an authoritarian state to a more democratic system. The separation of the church from the state also took place. The democratization process had a great advance at the beginning of the 20th century, driven by the social movements of the workers and leftist political groups. These ended up joining the political system at the beginning of the decade of 30s and giving stability to democracy. During this time, specifically in 1920s, the political system entered a big crisis. Popular and middle-class social movements questioned the oligarchic system of the state, demanding major political and economic and social reforms. The parliamentary system that used to exist at that time could not solve the social demands. Paralyzed by the various ministerial change, the battle between the political sides, and the weakness of the figure of the president. The reform finally came in 1925 in the formal constitution, which fixed a representative presidential regime with a separation of the power of the state. Between 1932 and 1970, the political system was perfected, allowing the entry of the middle and popular sectors, creating one of the most stable democracies in the continent. This was interrupted by the coup d'etat of 1973, where a military dictatorship was established, in which popular power was not. In 1981, the dictatorship changed the established constitution. The country returned to democracy after the theme of the no vote in plebiscite of 88.
There is no doubt that poverty and social inequality did not emerge in the country in the 1880s, nor have they disappeared in the mobility reality of Chile today. However, since the end of the 19th century, many elements combined to transform social problems into a social issue. In the 19th century, working conditions in the factories used to be hard. Long working hours, working have no time and no rest day. Work was every day and for all workers, including children and women.
The saltpeter workers were paid with tokens, so they could not buy outside the saltpeter work. Furthermore, they were not allowed to leave the workers, and if they did, they were persecuted or directly killed. So, throughout these years, series of these treatment and many other injustices, a series of social movements were launched that transformed the social issue into a problem that affects not only the workers, but the whole country. Since then, a series of innumerable writings, essays, press articles, and writing design began to analyze its causes and motives, as well as possible alternative solutions.
This rate of political and ideological debate can be summarized in three main currents.
The first current originated within the conservative Catholic world. The second current was liberal and secular, and was based in the Catholic world. The third current was socialist, driven by sectors belonging to the working class.
In the 19th century, at the beginning of the 20th century, womanhood took comfort many social and domestic limitations and obstacles, thus overshadowing male rights that now have anchored social. During that period, women could not refuse to have children, at least used to be very common and normalized to become pregnant at a very young age, and if they refused, it was judged very negatively by society. They were also not allowed to make financial decisions, even if they knew about the matter. During that period, the suffragist movement continued. In 1848, when a group of 68 women and 32 men signed the Declaration of Sentiments at Seneca Falls in the United States. This document denounced the grievances that women had spread throughout history and demanded political rights, mainly the rights to vote. At that time, it used to be only men who voted, and they had to meet certain requirements. They had to be over 25 years old, unpromoted or parents, and be able to read and write. It was not until 1934 that the
right to vote was approved in Chile during the second administration of Arturo Alessandri Palma. In 1952, women were allowed to vote in presidential and parliamentary elections. This allowed Chilean women over 21 years old who can read and write to participate in local elections.
Thank you for watching the video. Goodbye.